Welcome to Whispers of the Ancients, a journey into the heart of forgotten civilizations. In this space of quiet reflection and wonder, we travel back through the sands of time, to listen, to learn, and to remember. Let the echoes of the past guide us as we step gently into the world of those who shaped history long before history was written. Whispers of the Ancients, Episode 9, The Wari, Architects of Andean Order approximately 500 to 1000 CE, Segment 1. Beneath the silence of stone, in the cold silence of the Andean highlands, beneath layers of dust and centuries of neglect lies the legacy of a forgotten empire. One that rose in the shadows of towering peaks and vanished long before the Inca made their mark. It is a story rarely told in full, one without surviving names, without written histories. Yet it shaped the future of an entire region. This is the story of the Wari. Between 500 and 1000 CE, long before the golden age of Cusco, the Wari built an empire that stretched across a vast swath of the central Andes. Their architecture, administration, and ideology would set the stage for the mighty Inca who came centuries later. But while the Inca left palaces and chronicles, the Wari left only stones. Stones laid with purpose, walls measured in geometry, towns aligned with the stars and threads of power woven in silence. They were not just warriors, they were architects of order. Segment 2, The Birth of an Idea. The story begins in the Ayacucho Valley, in what is now south-central Peru. This high-altitude region, cold, rugged, and unforgiving, became the cradle of Wari civilization. Emerging from earlier traditions like the Wapa culture, the Wari did not burst forth suddenly. Their power grew steadily, carefully, like a city built brick by brick. Around the year 500 CE, they constructed their capital near the modern city of Ayacucho. It was vast, sprawling over 15 square kilometers. A highland metropolis unlike anything seen before in the Andes. Stone walls defined its boundaries. Rectangular compounds formed its grid. Ceremonial halls, storage buildings, and administrative zones gave it structure. This was no mere settlement. It was a statement, an idea cast in stone, civilization through design. Wari was not built for kings. It was built for function, for system, and above all, for control. Segment 3, Grids and Glyphs of Power. The Wari introduced something radical to the Andes, the concept of standardized urban planning. Their cities were not organic, winding clusters of homes. They were pre-plan ordered. At the heart of each administrative center lay enclosed compounds, tall-walled, inward-facing. Courtyards opened between rectangular halls. Ceremonial platforms rose alongside long storage rooms. Channels and drains cut beneath the surface to control the flow of water. The Wari imposed this model wherever they expanded. In the southern valleys, they built Cerro Ball, a high mountain citadel towering above the Moquegua region. In the northern highlands, they raised Viracachapampa with its vast, square enclosures and sunken plazas. Near Cusco, they laid out Picolacta, a city of straight lines and narrow passageways, rigid in form, yet alive in function. Across the Andes, this pattern repeated. Each site followed the same blueprint, a visual language of authority. And in every stone, the same message echoed: this is Wari, this is order, this is empire. Segment for Threads of the State. Power alone does not build empires, but organization does. The Wari understood this. They created an intricate network of state-run colonies, strategically planted across ecological zones from highland terraces to coastal deserts. These weren't military forts, they were administrative hubs, part city, part warehouse, part temple. Each served as a node in a centralized system. Goods flowed in and out: maize, quinoa, textiles, ceramics. Officials rotated between them. Religious ideology bound them together. From the central capital, policies radiated outward. From the regions, resources returned inward. This was not loose influence. This was empire, structured and systematized. And holding it all together was a shared visual code, textiles bearing repeating motifs, ceramics painted with the same divine figures, architecture repeating the same proportions. In a land of dozens of cultures and tongues, the Wari imposed one language, the language of form. Segment 5, the unseen god. Woven into Wari culture is the image of a god, a figure repeated across walls, vessels, and cloth. He carries distaffs, radiates from the head, and glares with circular eyes. He is known today by scholars as the staff god, and to later cultures as Varakoka. This deity was not a local tribal god. He was universal, cosmopolitan, a symbol of cosmic authority. By replicating his image throughout their territory, the Wari unified diverse peoples under a single spiritual identity. Ceramics carried him, tapestries proclaimed him, temples echoed his form in stone. The Wari religion was not one of personal faith, it was a state religion, designed to organize society to give divine legitimacy to the central government. In this way, belief became structure, and structure, belief. Segment 6, weaving the world. Among the Wari's most extraordinary legacies is not built in stone, but woven in thread, textiles. For the Wari were not just clothing, they were statements of power, identity, and belief. Using fine alpaca and vikiga wool, Wari artisans created tunics, mantles, and tapestries of extraordinary complexity. Some pieces used over 100 different colors. Others featured tessellated patterns so intricate they rival modern pixelation. But the brilliance was not only aesthetic, it was hierarchical. Certain motifs were reserved for elites, certain textiles for ritual use only. To wear a Wari tunic was not simply to dress, it was to declare rank and role in society. Textiles became currency, tribute, and sacred offering. They were burned as gifts to the gods or buried with the dead, and because they were portable, they became one of the empire's most effective tools, binding far-flung colonies to the central order. A thread became a law, a design became a doctrine. The Wari wove their empire not just in stone and soil, but in cloth. Segment 7, roads before the Inca. For centuries, credit has gone to the Inca for the creation of the vast Andean road system. But before Cusco, before Sopa Inca ruled, there were the Wari roads, paved in sections, straight when possible, traversing valleys, deserts, and mountains. Archaeological evidence shows that the Wari built long-distance routes, some of which the Inca later adopted and expanded. These roads connected not only cities, but ideologies. They enabled the flow of food, tools, textiles, and above all, people. Caravans of lamas trod these paths, carrying goods from highland farms to coastal markets. Messengers traveled them to deliver state information. Priests walked them between sacred shrines. Even more intriguing are the tambos, roadside way stations. Small, often square buildings placed along routes where travelers could rest, resupply, or report to administrators. The Wari had invented something astonishing for their time, an early, logistical state network, and in its design, one sees the early blueprint of what would become the famed Inca Empire. Segment 8, ritual and rule. In every Wari settlement, ritual was embedded into urban life. Open-air plazas hosted feasts and ceremonies. Temples served as anchors between heaven and earth. And in certain occasions, offerings, even sacrifices were made to appease cosmic forces. But unlike the Moki or the later Aztecs, the Wari left fewer depictions of dramatic human sacrifice. Their rituals, while still steeped in blood and spirit, appear more controlled, more embedded within the structure of statecraft. At Cerro Ball, a Wari ceremonial center perched on a mesa, archaeologists found evidence of massive feasting events, broken drinking vessels, discarded animal bones, and charred remains. These were no private gatherings, they were ritual performances, staged to reinforce hierarchy and shared identity. Beer made from maize, known as chicha, flowed in enormous quantities. Ceremonial vessels, often elaborately painted, were smashed as symbolic gestures at the end of each rite. In these rituals, politics met performance. To celebrate was to govern. To feast was to rule. Segment 9, a vanishing empire. Despite its power and precision, the Wari Empire did not last forever. By the mid-900s CE, signs of stress began to appear. Climate patterns shifted. Droughts struck the highlands. Agricultural yields declined. At the same time, Local elites in far-off colonies began to assert more independence. The grip of central authority weakened. Outposts were abandoned. Roads fell quiet. By the year 1000, the Wari capital, once bustling with life and administration, stood largely deserted. No grand battle was fought. No conquering army arrived. The Wari dissolved, not with a bang, but with a whisper. Yet their legacy did not die. Segment 10. Legacy in stone and spirit. The Wari left no written chronicles, no epic tales etched in glyphs, but their influence endured, passed like an echo through the valleys and peaks of the Andes. The Inca, centuries later, would adopt many of their innovations: urban planning with modular enclosures, state-controlled road systems, standardized artistic motifs, storage systems for surplus food. The idea of a universal state religion, even the very concept of an empire, as practiced in the Andes, was shaped by Wari precedent. They were the first to unify such vast and diverse terrain. They were the first to test the model of centralized rule in the highlands. In many ways, the Inca did not begin from scratch. They built on Wari foundations, and though the name Wari is barely known to most, the stones still speak, the roads still stretch, the patterns still persist. The Wari may be gone, but their order lives on, and so, their voices fade into silence once more, but the stones they raised, the stories they etched into earth and memory still whisper beneath our feet. Thank you for joining us on this chapter of Whispers of the Ancients. Until next time, may the past continue to speak, and may we continue to listen.